We now begin Book 2 of The Child Within, titled Related Papers. Foreword. The following papers are the real meat of the book. They are independent of one another, each standing on its own like a single key on a piano. Each paper makes a specific point among the thousands that might be of interest to the seeker. Yet, every paper is related to a point or points in the preceding chapters, as well as to the other related papers. Some of these relationships are obvious and immediate. Some are more indirect. I consider these papers to be more powerful in their relationship to one another than by themselves. The entire book has been written with these synergistic overtones in mind, and they represent the means by which I have been able to communicate beyond the limits of intellectualism and its limiting words. The reader needs no special ability to make this synergism happen. It is automatic for all of us. The related papers, like everything in the preceding chapters, the bones, are taken from recent journals and correspondence, except when noted otherwise. While an effort has been made to dovetail and fit the bones into a progression similar to the progression by which one awakens to the subjective truth, no such effort has been made with the related papers. They are arranged here in a nearly random order and may make very little sense if read before the preceding chapters have been read. The earnest reader can see and feel something special through various combinations of papers and his own experience. The reader who becomes familiar with the material will find hundreds of enlightening relationships on his own. These insights become the reader's own immaculate glimpses beyond the limits of intellectualism. Such glimpses constitute the real basis for learning and teaching. Some papers together make powerful chords, overtones. Others, side by side, make apparent discords, even contradictions. But the many messages of this book lie more in the harmonious overtones the reader will feel and know independently of words than in the information conveyed. Related Papers 1 through 5. Who is Han? Dear Jack, in answer to your question, who the hell is Han? The Han I write about is a mythical character representing one's own inner being. Han is the nearest one can come to his own self-discovery before consciously becoming that self. Han is one's own pre-existing identity just before the transfiguration at the top of the mountain of understanding, Dashan. Han answers our questions. Han is the chief angel among the world's tangible angels. Han is not God and doesn't claim to be. Han even makes certain one doesn't ignorantly call the Son of God, God. Han is as close as one comes to his real identity before consciously being that one. Yet, Han insists that one isn't all there is to God. God is even more, existing within and beyond the limits of awareness. Han says that awareness is infinite, as God is infinite, but Godhead exists even beyond infinity. Herein, Han and the Gnostics of old are in grand accord. Han tells of the three that are one, and of the one who is three to infinity. Han is the balance between Godhead and tangibility, the Logos. Han is identity I. Han is the muse of my journal and yours. Han is a good guy. Okay? 2 basic questions answered. Laurel asked, "What do you mean by quantum mankind?" In these papers, by quantum mankind, I mean all mankind. When we begin looking at the beehive as a single organism, that is a quantum view. When we start looking at all mankind as a single external organism, then we are looking at the appearance of quantum man in our own head. Laurel also asked, "And what do you mean by cosmology?" A cosmology is a creation story. Moses wrote a cosmology, the universe from nothing, in the first chapter of Genesis. The particle physicists are examining a cosmology, something from Big Bang, as they work back to the beginning of matter, some 15 billion years ago. It is good to note this parallel when we are talking about retrogressive progression early in the book. The mathematician intuits and knows. Then the particle physicist looks into his accelerators to confirm the mathematician's logical knowing. Physics is a confirming activity. Math is designated the pure science. Our individual intuitive knowing, which comes as a glimpse of light, is the pure science and is confirmed in the tangible world as sciences and our own discoveries. Do you see this? Now, our subjectivism allows us to lower the veil, and we look out into the world for the confirmation of our knowing. This is not unlike the physicist looking out to see technology following later to put his ideas to work for mankind, or an inventor looking to see his invention manufactured. Our subjective glimpses of truth are eventually confirmed on the objective scene. Added thought. Cosmology explains half the metaphysical reversal inherent in the first and last equation. Subjectivism, when understood, explains another part of the reversal, inside, outside. One doesn't yet really understand either of these equations until he considers them both, not necessarily simultaneously. While cosmology and science works on the first and last equation, heading back to Big Bang, but not beyond it, the child within brings us to consider the inside and outside flow and its relationship to cosmology. When these and the other balances are brought together, it seems we get back before Big Bang to the primal self-image. That is where these words are intended to take us, bring us. How does an old soldier dare to write a book about the truth? There is something incongruous about a man who fought as an infantry soldier in 2 wars, slashing his way from mortal combat and destruction to esoteric self-discovery and light, isn't there? Somehow it doesn't fit, unless, of course, one makes the connection and intuits how human extremity leads to spiritual insight, how darkness makes the light plain, and how guilt uncovers primordial guiltlessness. If one has heard of Arjuna's selection on the battlefield, where the final struggle between light and darkness is waged, he might not wonder how I dare write this book. This old soldier is presently engaged in his final struggle, warfare of the most primal kind, for which he has been not one bit less than a worthy candidate for a special mystery, duly, truly prepared. That preparation was not of myself, but of another. I have not made a single move that was not part of this moment as I sit here, disclosing the lessons learned. Not a move to the right or left, not a word has come to me or gone out from me that was not part of a plan, not of my own planning, but of another's. I have been carefully, painstakingly, most often against my will, brought to this moment in linear time to reveal a mystery. As certainly as this is true for me, it is true for the reader as well. One who reads these words has a right to question them. He should. Moreover, he should put them to the test, even those that seem most obviously true. I welcome your doubt. I've asked all who have studied with me over the years to question everything I talk about and believe nothing until it has been put to the test and found worthy. But reader, when something begins stirring within you in the paragraphs and pages ahead, an inner stirring that comes softly and unexpectedly with unmistakable authority, then you might be wise to touch and take note of the idea you feel then, and note the theme this book contains. I have been given these words to live, prove, confirm, and make plain, so those who read them may run. Why me, an old soldier who has lived through the inhumanity of warfare? You will surely see one day. You will surely see. The secret of the seed. When the seed first falls to ground, it contains its own final flowering within itself. Deep within, the seed remembers where it came from. It remembers the former plant and the flower that produced it. It remembers by way of an internal imprint of the original plant. One can actually see that imprint when he looks at the seed's internal structure with a powerful microscope. I am told this is literally the way it is with tree seed. Well now, what has this to do with the secrets? As the years go on, and as the single seed is broken down into its roots, branches, and leaves, the seed's own internal secret is the knowledge that, at the end of its span in time, it will bloom and seed again. Individual man has essentially forgotten his own inmost secrets. In civilization, there have always been those mystics who have known of the quantum human seed's inner secret and its relationship to the beginning of time and space. These people, having found the beginning, have found the end as well. Their views of civilization seem remarkably similar. They speak of the society of mankind moving in the direction of his own quantum blossoming, thence to seed and finally rest. In every culture, the prophets have admonished the people to strive to be a conscious part of the seed which will be, most say, planted again in enigmatic time. Listen carefully. One sees the title of an essay, The Secret of the Seed. He thinks the author is going to discuss some revelation that an examination of the seed will reveal to the reader. It doesn't seem to occur to most of us, or it didn't to me, that it is possible the author has written about a secret that the seed knows, not one we will know when we examine the seed or read the essay. Such is the secret I have found, and would disclose if I am given the subtle words to string. One hears about a guru somewhere and thinks that teacher can reveal something wonderful to him. It hasn't occurred to him yet that the guru is part of the consciousness observing the guru, and that the teacher out there may very well represent the external view of the viewer's own mystery within. Ah so, as Han would say, ah so. Could it be that this volume you are reading is not outside yourself, but is the expanding consciousness of you, the reader? Of course it is. The value is in the reading consciousness, not the book. But the book has its place in the world and is entitled to recognition and credit if it is telling the truth in new ways the reader can understand. We only slowly learn to give credit to our external views that point to our internal nature. Old Croak and the House of Mirrors, a story of discontent and discernment. Old Croak lived in a mill pond with 10,000 other frogs. Each night he sang in the chorus, and their melody could be heard for miles. Upon reaching manhood, Croak felt a disquiet grow within himself, and he decided there was more to life than singing songs from the lily pads. "This incessant peeping and croaking is driving me mad," he said. "What I need is quiet." Bidding his friends goodbye one night, Croak made a gigantic leap into the darkness of anywhere but here. As it happened, a carnival, which had closed for the night, was located in the field beside the pond. Croak's mighty leap carried him up and over the pond and through a small opening into the very center of the House of Mirrors. Not knowing where he had landed, Croak sat huddled in the inky darkness of the closed hall of mirrors, awaiting the morning sunlight. Everything was silent, and strangely, Croak missed the chorus that evening. "Croak," said old Croak. His voice was louder than usual, and it echoed weirdly. It was more resonant as well, but there was no reply. "That's funny," said Croak. He was alone in his silence, and for the first time his disquiet included a sense of loneliness. The next morning, Croak opened his eyes to find himself in the center of 10,000 frogs. His loneliness disappeared immediately. "Aha," he said. "You decided to follow me here. Why didn't you answer me last night when I croaked?" 10,000 mouths moved, but no sound came from any of them. Croak was puzzled. "Why don't you answer me?" he asked. 10,000 mouths moved, but there was still no answer. Croak frowned. "What kind of a silly game is this?" 10,000 frogs frowned and moved their mouths, but there was only silence. "Is this the kind of punishment I get for complaining about singing in the chorus every night?" he asked. 10,000 mouths moved in silence. Croak stamped the floor in anger and threw himself into a double backward flip. 10,000 angry frogs stamped the floor and threw themselves into double backward flips. "What is this?" the surprised Croak wondered. "I thought I was the only one at the pond who could do a double backward flip," mumbled and humbled Croak. "They've been holding out on me," he said, sulking to the floor. 10,000 frogs mumbled silently. 10,000 frogs sulked to the floor. As the days went by, Croak came to several conclusions, almost metaphysical conclusions. "I've gone deaf," he thought. "Somehow the mighty leap from the lily pad has damaged my hearing." Then, more seriously, in the way of a good thinker who thinks a lot, he thought, "I'm being punished by God or by the other frogs. They are mocking me every move I make." But after a few more days, Croak's metaphysics turned deeper. He decided there was surely greater meaning behind the appearances than he first believed. "Aha!" he croaked. "There is real metaphysical significance here. Definitely. Yes, definitely. In the first place, I notice that no one moves unless I move. That's a hint. And if I hop a short distance, they hop a short distance. If I do a mighty backward double flip, they do precisely the same. It seems to me that what is being made plain here is that I am the power of the scene. Yes, yes, I am the power here. Everyone does what I do. Yes. Now there must be another step. Aha! Now I shall teach them to do what I say to do." "All right, you guys," said the reinvigorated Croak. "Enough of this togetherness stuff. I want to be alone. Therefore, I want all of you to get the hell out of here." 10,000 mouths moved, but that was all. "Okay, now," Croak began again. "All of you idiots, pay attention to me. I am your teacher." He had their attention. "Leave the room," Croak ordered. 10,000 mouths moved, but no one left the room. "Well," thought Croak, "apparently I must lead the way and show them how to do what I say to do, because I want them to do what I want them to do." He ordered them to leave the room again, and this time, as he spoke, he jumped behind a piece of bric-a-brac on the floor. From behind the bric-a-brac, Croak could see only half the frogs in the room. "Good," he shouted, "good. Half of you crazy croakers have left the room just as I ordered. All right now, guys, all of you that are out of the room, stay out, and all of you that are still in the room, leave the room like this." As he said this, Croak leaped from behind the bric-a-brac. Promptly, half the frogs leaped from Croak's view, but the other half jumped back into the room. "Oh, come on, fellows, come on now." 10,000 frogs' mouths moved in insolent silence. "All right, let's try that again," said Croak. But wherever he hopped and whatever he did, he could never get all the frogs to leave the room. At one point, he leaped into a box and thought for a moment he was alone. Then, looking directly overhead, he saw 10,000 frogs peering down at him from identical boxes. "Smart asses!" shouted Croak, leaping back into the center of the room, followed by 10,000 mocking frogs. "I have learned to read lips, and you jerks just called me a smartass," he moaned. "Oh, this is too much for me. I must be alone. I simply must get away from here." That night, Croak sat on the floor sobbing silently. He thought of the old days when the darkness was a time for singing and sunshine a time for playing. In those days, I wasn't leading the world of frogs, trying to make them do the things that was pleasing to me, he thought. Oh my, this world does everything I do, but nothing I tell it to do. Then, in anguish, he said, "I give up. I surrender." Whatever the scheme of things in this world, it is too much for me to fathom." At that moment, through his tears, Croak beheld a shaft of moonlight streaking through the hole in the wall. Without hesitation, and with no thought whatever for the consequence, Croak mustered every ounce of strength that he could find and leaped through the hole toward the moonlight above. It was a mighty, mighty leap, a backward triple somersault, full gainer, double twist, with a jackknife that put him over the house of the mirrors into a lily pad in the middle of the pond. "Hallelujah!" thought the relieved frog. The moonlight was very bright that night. Croak looked around, and not one of the 10,000 frogs was in sight. "At last I'm alone," he rejoiced in delight, to be answered by 10,000 voices celebrating his return. Croak was sort of glad. "They are saying what they want to say," he thought. "I'm not alone with myself any more, or am I?" Meanwhile, back at the House of the Mirrors, one mirror asked another, "Have you ever seen 10,000 frogs jump out of the room all at once like that?" "Goodness, no," the other mirror answered. "They sure died in a hurry, didn't they?" "They didn't die," said the first mirror. "They simply moved on to another plane of consciousness." "Plane splain? What does that mean?" "They're dead and gone," said the corner mirror. "I saw them all leap into the fire all at once." "They're still alive," another mirror said. "Hold my hand and I'll contact them." "Baloney. I tell you there are 10,000 dead frogs." Overhead, the moon, hearing the argument among the mirrors, whispered in moon talk, which is understandable only to mirrors, children, and whoever sits in the moonlight. "There was no life in the images, my friends. Therefore, life cannot leave the images. Isn't that so?" The mirrors whispered, "Yes, that makes sense. Yes, indeed." But they still didn't know there was only one frog. On the lily pad, in the pond, old Croak heard the moon too. He looked into the water beside his lily pad and saw the moon's reflection there. Suddenly he understood who the 10,000 frogs were. More importantly, he began to suspect who he was. The secret contains 3 slow steps. If someone were to come here today, and if by some marvel I could communicate so completely I could give him every secret I knew, it would do him very little immediate good in the world. How so? Because he must first build the self-confidence that he is indeed what has been revealed to him. This happens for us precept upon precept, and it takes time in the world. When that confidence is established, he alone builds his credibility in his world, a credibility he has in hand before he can set out to do for his subjective world what he knows is finally necessary to do. I am certain this is why I was given mysteries 40 years before I was told that my time had come. It will not take so much time for those who come to see me now. The elements of the secret: discovering the child, living the equation, subjectivism. These 3 constitute the living life of love. When the child is first discovered, one can barely believe what he has found. Then, when the equation is discovered, he ever so slowly gets the courage to live it. When the subjective idea finally and fully arrives, and he learns that he is the Christ itself to his own newly discovered subjective world, he is troubled mightily by the magnitude of the work He stands in utter amazement at what he is called upon to do for everyone. But with God's grace, he persists, here a little, there a little. It has been shown to me that the child I have found is soon to be found by many more in this, my subjective world. Those who find it within themselves will strengthen one another as they communicate in love and encouragement, one to another. They will give the necessary strength to those who have felt a measure of their findings. Then, as the equation is lived, they will encourage others to live it also, bringing the world into bloom with a new community of children. They will have the seed of the Father within them. A special letter. There are 3 difficult stages for our breakout into the light. Number 1, it is difficult to recognize that the child within is the same child we were when we were children. That is, it seems unbelievable that the way we saw things as a 6 or 7-year-old is the way we are actually capable of seeing things again, here and now, no matter what our human age, or that now we can go still further, see and find the infinite original of ourself. A necessary for a time veil hangs before the eyes and the heart, which produces the easy ability to think of the child as anything but a fantasy, a dream of Pollyanna. Number 2, equally slow and difficult is the understanding that the child within us is the actual Christ light of us. They are the same one, and they are we, I, us identity. And number 3, the third area of personal difficulty comes in our moving from theory and mental speculation about the child to action here in the world. Understandable mountains of human intransigence and disbelief stand between our recognition within and the world outside. It is only line upon line that our actions in the world are recognized in the world. Then, one day, one of those around us begins to see the child of us and the child of themselves. Bit by bit, here a little, there a little, our credibility grows. The wonders are seen and recognized. Finally, our entire subjective world, internal and external, responds. Without the child, first and foremost, the subjective view is nothing more than a personal attempt to manipulate the scene to our own advantage. Without the child, the equation can't be fully comprehended. Without the child, one is dead. Without the child and the child's equation, science founders without direction.